Okay, welcome back to Stories with Steve. This is a story about when I saw a CNA get arrested for abusing a patient. Okay, so this takes place, I want to say 2011 going into 2012, somewhere in that frame. Now, at this point in time, my mother was in a rehab facility, you know, to recover from a stroke and an aneurysm, right? So I was there visiting her, right? And I went outside to get some fresh air, make a phone call or whatever. I bump into another patient's family member, and now me and this person are talking, chit chat, whatever. And while we're out there, there's this like middle aged, angry looking Jamaican lady dressed in CNA clothing with a stank looking look on her face. Angry, stank, slightly evil look on her face. Look somewhere in between a demon, an evilness and a look of disgust, like garbage was stuck up her nose and she couldn't get it out, or like somebody was constantly farting in her face, just a stink look, right? So me and this other patient's family member, we're making remarks to each other about how crazy her look on her face is, like how you just walk around like all the time, like takes more energy to make your face ball scrunched up like that. But anyway, so while we're chit chatting about that, and then we go into another subject, the police roll up. Now this place was in New Rochelle, so the New Rochelle police show up, right? And we're like, what are the police doing here? Now the lady had went to the back of the facility to get smoke a cigarette because she had a little cigarette in her hand. So she goes back there to smoke a cigarette, and here comes the police. The police follow her back there. Now they follow her back there. Within about 5 minutes, we see them come back around. She's in handcuffs doing that, perp walk that you would see on TV, but the face even more screwed up. Looking like that. So, and we're like, damn. So we joke around like, what did she get arrested for that face she got on or something, joking like that. But then later on, in New York City at least, there's like News 12 and other local news networks that you can look stuff up on, whether you see it directly on a video on TV or you can go on their website. So then we find out that what basically happened is this lady was beating on a patient. Now the patient didn't speak English. This lady only spoke like, American English and Jamaican patois. So there was a language barrier. But then the other lady only spoke Spanish, only understood Spanish, but also had some kind of situation or disability where she couldn't even speak. So even if you did speak Spanish, she couldn't, talk to you and tell you what's going on. And her hands were messed up, so she couldn't write. And her family was coming to the place to visit her, but they would notice she would be bruised up, looking like she got into a fight with somebody or something like that, or somebody was abusing her. And unfortunately, in a lot of these nursing homes and some of these hospitals and so on and so forth, just like you have the Code of Ormeta with organized crime and gangs, and the police have the blue wall of silence, CNAs do the same thing. So unfortunately, you could have the greatest CNA on earth. She's sweet, she's nice, and she's changed every patient with ease or whatever, and she's nice and respectful. She'll cover for the evil CNA. So you'll have a CNA who's in there stealing from the patients, beating on the patients, you know what I'm saying, doing other stuff to patients. And unfortunately, they have like this code of silence amongst a lot of these CNAs where the good ones won't report the bad ones, right? So they're basically trying to figure out what's going on. Like why is our relative looking all bruised up all the time? But we asked the CNAs and we asked the nurses, and they're all acting as if nothing's going on, right? And they obviously can figure out something's up, something smells fishy. So what the family does is they go and they buy a teddy bear, and they place like a little camera inside of the teddy bear's eyes or mouth or nose or whatever, and place it inside the room. And unfortunately, what they ended up capturing it on video was the CNA was going into the room, yelling at the lady, cursing at the lady, smacking her around, beating her in the face with the remote control from the TV, throwing her in the bed, throwing her off the bed, cursing at her, yelling at her, punching her, doing all kinds of stuff, right? And this poor lady couldn't communicate with anybody, you know. On top of that, like I said, her own language, if she was able to speak, was Spanish. And in this particular facility, there weren't too many people who spoke Spanish. You know what I'm saying? Or any other language other than like English, Jamaican, American English, Jamaican Patois, and maybe some Yiddish, right? But if you spoke Spanish, Italian, Arabic, Creole, anything else, you were out of luck, right? So the family gives this video to the police. The police then find the lady with the at the facility, and they basically arrest her. Um, the CNA was from somewhere in Parkchester, New York. I mean, Parkchester in the Bronx. So, and she was arrested for that crime of beating this lady. And unfortunately, this goes on too much. This goes on way too much in too many facilities because unfortunately, there's a lot of people that take their relatives and they put them in these facilities and they just leave them there and forget about them, right? And then you have these people that have a preconceived notion of other people, whether it's based on they're just a bad person themselves or they have some kind of hang up that they don't put into the job application. Like they don't like people of certain religions or ethnicities, or they don't like Americans or people of certain races or religions. And now you've basically left this person alone with a very vulnerable person, man or a woman. And this person can unleash all their evilness and fury out on this person. Also, even if they're not just like, let's say, downright evil, there's also many cases where these people are clumsy and they drop patients on the floor, they bump their head, and they don't even, they'll like dust the person off and then put them back in a wheelchair and not even tell anything to the nurses or a doctor. I have a friend who worked at a facility. This one he worked at was in the Bronx, and he normally did home care, but he also had a CNA license. So he was working there for a few weeks out of the year. And while he was there, he said he saw, people dropping people and stuff like that. And there was one incident where an older man, you know, uh, was being transferred unsafety like from, I guess, one wheelchair to another or something like that. The old man fell, bumped his head, right? And these people picked him up, like dust him off, and just put him back in the wheelchair and then put him in his bed. Now, anybody who falls and hits their head hard, you can get a concussion, you can get a brain bleed, you can get all kinds of stuff. But when you're much older or a baby, you're a lot more susceptible to very bad, dangerous injuries. And my friend, having a conscience and being a good person, said, you know what, I'm not with this blue wall of silence or whatever that these CNAs have, where they don't tell on each other. And I don't work in this facility every day. I'm just here for a few weeks. And my conscience is not going to let me feel good if I don't say something. So he ended up reporting what happened, right? He ended up reporting what happened. And then this group of CNAs tried to approach him on some weird cultural stuff because he was American. So they were calling him a Yankee and how dare you rat on us, you Yankee. And he's like, look, I didn't join your CNA gang. I didn't swear to no code, right? I'm here for myself, my job, and for the patients. I'm not here for you. So unfortunately, if you do have a relative that happens to be in one of these facilities, you know what I'm saying? Because you can find home care if you really try. But if you do have relatives that are in these facilities and you care about them, visit them. Put cameras in their room. See what's going on. Because a lot of these old folks, you know what I mean? And some young people that are in these facilities are getting abused. They're getting robbed and all kinds of stuff. And these workers are getting away with a lot, right? And unfortunately, the good workers don't want to, tell. So things happen and people never know. And then somebody's relative passes away early, or, maybe there could have been some intervention in something and they could have lived a little bit longer. And, Unfortunately, they didn't because of what's going on in those places. But that's the story about when I saw a CNA get arrested for abusing a patient. Sad, sad, really sad.